My first guest, please welcome Steven Seagal.
Yes. Oh, what? You know what I heard today? That they just got a date for you to do Saturday Night Live to host it?
Apparently.
Apparently is the word of the day. Apparently, there's an audience not only ready to feast on the gossip of the world's silliest fibber, but also a very vocal secondary crowd ready to defend him with venomous comments. Apparently, there's a lot I left out of my previous video, which I'm going to try and make up for by having this be a tell-all story of Steven Seagal's life up until today. And apparently, a few days after my first video, which blew up in a way I didn't imagine was possible, news of Seagal's relationship with the motherland dropped. Hopefully this video will not only catch up to the story, but also catch up to my subscriber count. The first video was for a very small group of friends, but it randomly snagged the algorithm. I've been in shock at the numbers ever since. I'm happy to have any size audience because it's my goal to cultivate a friendly community around my videos. I was expecting to be working with much smaller numbers for a while, but hey, welcome to the satellite. Come visit Lansing, Michigan, capital of Michigan, the Great Lakes State. Visit the Old Town, the Elderly Instruments, or the Olds Museum. Did you know Lansing, Michigan is the birthplace of the Oldsmobile? Want to hear what other geriatric wonders spawned out of Old L-Town? In 1952, Stephen Frederick Seagal was born to medical technician Patricia Seagal and math teacher Samuel Seagal. Of course, you'll notice the pronunciation is different here, and that's because while little Stevie grew up in 1950s Michigan, he would have been Stevie Seagal. He adopted a new pronunciation after seeing an exhibit by Belarusian artist Mark Chagall. He was purportedly so moved by it that he decided to therefore call himself
Steven Seagal.
By my estimation, he would have been in his late 20s to early 30s at the time, but as I said, little Stevie was born in Lansing, but moved to Fullerton, California when he was 5, which ended up being good for him. His mother points out that before the move, he was frail and suffered from asthma, but overcame these ailments when reaching California. There, while attending Buena Park High School, go Coyotes, Steven is reported to have spent most of his time listening to music in the garage and helping an old Japanese man at his Aikido dojo just around the corner. Come visit Japan, says the friendly old man. He has no name in any of my sources. He's just described in People magazine as nice. But who knows? Maybe that man was Albert Einstein. Anyway, Steven goes to Japan at some point in time. Unfortunately, the dates get blurry here due to Seagal's pathological lying. He claims to have trained with the founding father of Aikido, Morihei Ueshiba, but he died in 1969. Seagal was talking with this friendly old man around a year before, but his trip couldn't have been earlier than 1968. Did this nameless old man send some 16-year-old to the master of a martial arts school within a year of knowing him? Probably not. But not only is there this discrepancy, Seagal was also enrolled in Fullerton College back in California from the fall of 1970 to the fall of 1971, meaning he was then at least 19 before staying in Japan. Now we know for certain he did spend some of his youth there. His Japanese is fluent. I've seen some people who know it better saying that it's pretty much flawless as far as our footage of it goes.
重曹面白かったね、重曹。
暴れましたね。
なんで？
いや、その乱暴のところに入ってきたらね、その時々悪い人の人をいじめたりね、いろいろこうかけてくるでしょう。我々はそれも喜んでね、そういう歓迎したね。We're happy to oblige them.
He certainly spent some formative years there, but he was back in California by 1974. We know this because this is where he met his first wife and Aikido master, Miyako Fujitani, who describes their passionate romance years as Steven following her back home to Japan after a family trip to America. As it so happens, Miyako's family ran an Aikido dojo, and so when Seagal stuck to the Fujitanis like a leech, he got it in his head to refer to himself as the first white man to own a dojo in Japan. Maybe he could swing that if his wife owned it and he married into it, but even then, it's not only a shallow claim, but still just wrong. Miyako's parents owned it. Her brother and herself were only in line for inheritance. In 1975, Miyako and Steven had their first child together, Kentaro Seagal, and were officially husband and wife. "Come visit the kids sometimes," Miyako might have said to Steven Seagal, father of two and homesick expat. He wanted to return to America and find his success in either Hollywood or the restaurant business. So in another reality, we got a Kitchen Nightmares episode out of Seagal's no doubt ruinous ownership of an establishment. But return he did to California eventually, with his family's money in his pockets. For 5 years, he used his wife's family to make money for his trip back, putting them out of meals some nights. But in 1980, there he was back in the States, the last thing he said to his wife being, "I always do the right thing. I will never betray you." 4 years later, in 1984, without even floating a divorce, Seagal married a second woman named Adrienne LaRosa. In 1978, Seagal starred in his first Hollywood film, Above the Law. Sorry. Before 1978, Seagal married LaRosa in 1984, but annulled the marriage that same year. He got Kelly LeBrock, actress and shampoo model, knocked up while married to 2 different women. After Miyako found out about the pregnancy because Steven had to return to Japan in order to catch LeBrock on a trip abroad, she finalized their divorce, which I might add, he did to LeBrock the same thing he did to Miyako, just in her home country. People magazine reported in 1990 that neither Kentaro nor Ayako Seagal, now using her maiden name as an actress and writer, have memory of Steven Seagal as their father, as he visited the family so rarely. But in 1987 comes both Annalisa Seagal and Seagal's first acting credit, Above the Law. Steven did many things to get where he is, not all of which are documented. On its face, a statement like that might be applied to anyone, but only God and Santa can see when you're naughty behind closed doors. And if those lumps of coal in your stockings don't teach you nothing, then boom, God comes and lights those suckers up, and that's what hell is. Or I think so anyway. I only know Bible through Coca-Cola ads and Simpsons reruns. But details of Steven Seagal's early career are about as sketchy as that. We don't exactly know how he got his start, but before Above the Law, he was so strapped for cash, he arranged a scheme for insurance fraud. Seagal found a friend willing to steal his wife's Porsche Carrera so Steven could collect the insurance. He then told the Los Angeles Times Magazine that he made an attempt to catch the thief as he got away. This is an example of a documented way Seagal operated. As an example of an undocumented way, 2 men by the names of Mark Makita and Joe Hames, a Warner Brothers executive, reported to Spy Magazine that Seagal had disappeared from a regular dojo after going broke. A week later, Seagal returned, flashing a new car and a stack of $100 bills 6 inches high. He is reported to have done that at least twice, both times claiming to have pulled a hit for the mob in order to get the money. Now, Seagal alludes to his ties to organized crime pretty often, which is funny for 2 reasons. The first reason is he also alludes to his work with the CIA, going so far as to pass on others' stories as his own. In talking with Spy, Bob Strickland spoke about his experience as a CIA operative and his time around Seagal. The dramatic part is that as Bob spent more time around Seagal, Seagal gained experience as a CIA operative. He also stole a story from a Green Beret and told it off as his own at a party, but forgot that the Green Beret was a member of his audience at the time. Reported by Makita, the Green Beret derided Seagal. "Hey idiot, that's my story." But the second reason Seagal's ties to organized crime is funny is that it very well may be true. His introduction to stardom was somewhat backroom, a little shady. Seagal had some sort of relationship with a man named Mike Ovitz. The details here are opaque, but Seagal confided in the LA Times that the two love each other very much, and that to Ovitz he was like a guru. Mike Ovitz was in Warner Brothers. He took Seagal up to the executives, like Joe James, had Seagal do a pre-practiced Aikido routine, and said, here's your next action star. Apparently, Seagal threw some assistants around the room, but the executives weren't told it was rehearsed. So to them, they were watching a man throw people around the conference room unabridged. Knowing how Seagal later treated professional stuntmen, I wouldn't be surprised if he was looking for impact while performing for the bigwigs. Seagal was greenlit for a screen test afterwards and bombed it. According to James, Seagal's voice was squeaky and he did not come across well on screen. Ovitz then went back to the executives and essentially said, okay, listen, I know that was bad, but I'll make you a new deal. I'm slating my other client to make you a sequel, right? Well, I'll make him do it for cheaper if you let Steven sign. And what do you know? Seagal was in a motion picture. Above the Law. Seagal plays a retired CIA agent and policeman. He uses Aikido to unravel a drug cartel armed with explosive weaponry. 50% on Rotten Tomatoes, but doubled its budget in the box office because online metrics didn't exist in 1988. After Above the Law came out, Hard to Kill, Marked for Death, and Out for Justice followed. Hard to Kill, directed by Bruce Malmuth, Man, Wife, Die, Man Revenge with Aikido, grossed $59 million. Marked for Death, directed by Dwight H. Little, retired DEA agent uses Aikido against drug cartel, grossed $46 million. Seagal used a clause in his contract to make this movie at 20th Century Fox instead of Warner Brothers. This is supposedly over a dispute between Seagal's director of choice, Dwight H. Little, and Warner Brothers' choice, Bruce Malmuth. This is the first movie credited to Seagal Nasso Productions. Out for Justice, directed by John Flynn, Policeman's Partner Die, Policeman Revenge with Aikido. Grossed $40 million. A lot happened behind the scenes here, so get ready. Seagal personally edited the scenes of fellow actor William Forsythe, believing that his co-star was upstaging him. Rayanne Malone, Nicole Sellinger, Christine Keeve, and an unnamed woman accused Seagal of having harassed them at this time. One of these incidents was witnessed by Bob Strickland, where while brushing her teeth in an on-set trailer, Rayanne Malone received a comment from Seagal on how the actress looked like she was performing while brushing her teeth. The director John Flynn said in an interview with Shock Cinema that he just didn't get along with Steven. Seagal had an attitude on set, started getting to his head. He was routinely an hour late to filming and boasted about his abilities when he bothered to show up at all. According to Gene LaBelle, stunt coordinator for the film, sometimes Steven has a tendency to cheese off the wrong people, and you can get hurt doing that. Now, according to MMA Underground, there was a rumor that Seagal claimed he was immune to being choked out. He was simply too practiced a martial artist Aikido master to be choked out. Gene LaBelle supposedly called his bluff by offering to try it on Seagal. They assumed the position, Seagal said go, LaBelle choked him out, and Seagal defecated and urinated and went to sleep. Now, this has always been a mere rumor, but possibly due to legal reasons, there has never been confirmation by LaBelle or Seagal. But LaBelle has gone on to affirm that there were 30 stuntmen in camera that were watching.
Gene LaBelle told me that story.
Yeah. Gene tells you it like this. He doesn't actually tell you the whole story.
What's the story?
Well, you know, Steven was trying to say that no one could choke him out. You can't choke him out. He had this move. This move stop you from choking out. So, you know, I was like, all right, Steven, let's try it. And I get him in a headlock there. I get him in the rear naked. And he takes this hand, the free hand, and then you just karate chops me right in, you know, the old sisters.
Steven Seagal is cock puncher.
And then I guess he got tired after doing that, and he just fell asleep. And I guess maybe he forgot to go to the bathroom. So he went to the bathroom then.
Oh, that's hilarious. You versus Judo Gene LaBelle. What exactly happened on the set of that movie?
Either he is a pathological liar or he had somebody, you know, making up these stories. He came over to my trailer. There was never ever any confrontation with him ever.
Never.
In any way, shape, or form, and I swear to God on my children, they're the most sacred thing to me in this life.
Are you familiar with his student, Ronda Rousey? Are you impressed by her?
I've never heard of, that's a her, I've never heard of her.
Oh, okay. All right, fair enough.
I had to make him crap his pants a second time.
So, Above the Law, Hard to Kill, Marked for Death, Out for Justice, and out in theaters October 9th, 1992, Under Siege. The movies were getting worse with each round, but Seagal was still a protagonist and a macho man in the public eye. He had a mystique then, as people had no choice but to believe his claims in interviews about his connections with powerful benefactors. For a while, he lived the image he wanted, the illusion he always desired, but it all came crashing down on April 20th, 1991. It was after all these movies that Seagal gave that earlier interview with Arsenio. In it, Seagal is questioned about his upcoming appearance as host for Saturday Night Live.
You know what I heard today? That they just got a date for you to do Saturday Night Live, to host it?
Apparently.
Are you gonna do that?
Yeah, why not?
Have you ever done comedy?
Yeah, I used to do stand-up.
Stop, Steven, stop.
It's a joke.
You're too
That's my
serious.
first attempt at comedy right there, and I failed, so maybe I better not do the show.
His hesitancy for the position is evident, and he would go on to perform what many in the writer's room refer to as the worst they ever had. The jury is out on whether or not in the 30 years since, if they'd reconsider with more recent guests in mind.
You seem to be getting along just fine. Is everything okay?
I think Dougie here needs a soda. Why don't you go out and look,
But his late-night blunder didn't drop him into obscurity. He allegedly had a handicap by the name of Julius R. Nassau. Though Arsenio liked to mention that Seagal was neighbors with Michael Jackson, Seagal was also neighbors with a well-connected man. What can be said about Julius R. Nassau? Legally, I mean. The man certainly did have connections. Nassau was a pharmacologist from Italy, pictured here living next door to Seagal's Staten Island residence. The two were, according to Seagal, besties, and established a film company together, Seagal Nassau Productions. I mentioned them earlier when I listed off Marked for Death because they're credited for that one, but I don't need to tell you that. You're keen on details like that. You just know Steven fought hard to have his surname first in the company name. He very well may have rather said no than found Nassau Seagal Productions. But anyway, they're called Steamroller Productions today. So despite the poor reception of previous works, Seagal was set to make a film with his bestie. He made On Deadly Ground in 1994, which Seagal recalls as his finest moment of his Hollywood career. It was poorly received by critics. On Deadly Ground, directed by Steven Seagal. A firefighter revenges an oil rig for the environment. Sounds like a premise I can get behind, but writers call it flat, unappealing, and boring. It won Seagal a Golden Raspberry Award for Worst Director, but it may be in the so bad it's good category as well. It might get its own video someday.
Steven Seagal had just met with the Dalai Lama, and apparently if you give enough money to the Dalai Lama's charities, eventually you get something out of it. Right. And so the Dalai Lama made him a deity. He was Steven Seagal, now Steven Seagal, now he's Steven Seagal, the god, the deity from the Dalai Lama. And he comes to the set, and he's there, and Keenan says, so what? I just met with the Dalai Lama, and he, in his wisdom, decided to make me a deity. And his assistant comes up to him and says, hey, Steven, your ex-wife called. She can't bring the kids over this weekend. You tell that fucking...
Anyway, Seagal is a Buddhist, and once again, his relationship with a powerful person is unclear. Somehow, he befriends a significant Buddhist figurehead known as the Panchen Llama, a secondary figure to the Dalai Lama after the fifth reincarnation crowned his own teacher as the fourth Panchen Lama in his lineage. It's complicated, but the Panchen Lama is now a role that designates the next Dalai Lama. It seems to be a much less politically involved branch of the tree, but still important. And Seagal had beguiled the 10th Panchen Llama enough to entrust him an important responsibility. While she studies abroad in America, my only daughter will need someone to look after her, he says. Now, for convenience sake, I've summarized that interaction because eventually Seagal ends up taking care of a girl named Yapshi Pan Rinzing Wangmo, or Renji for short, or the Princess of Tibet for long. She seems to be an important person, but again, dates on these events are foggy, and Seagal continues to muddy the water. In the 2006 article of The New Yorker, Renji's time as a Los Angeles-based paragon at such a young age is described at length, featuring a brief interaction with Seagal. Renji calls Seagal number one of two for most important people in her life, the other being her own mother. It's sweet, but not only has he abandoned at least two of his own children at this point, again, dates are foggy, so it might be a third in there, but he also lies about how he acquired guardianship of the girl to begin with. Seagal reports it as if there was some kind of hostage situation he was rescuing her out of, while Renji's mother clarifies that the departure was straightforward and there was never any danger. But yeah, for a time, Seagal had a kind of guardianship over the only child in a theocratic bloodline. He was a controversial choice, because he had gotten in touch with a different religious figure to have himself declared the reincarnation of a Lama. But when asked on his actual Buddhist beliefs, he replies that there is only one God, which is an entirely Western notion. I'm not super confident, but I'm pretty sure that idea just doesn't work in Buddhism at all. I could be wrong, but not everybody can be as virtuous as Steven Seagal. Anyway, back to the movies. If you still remember Seagal Productions, they're producing most of Steven's movies at this point, and none of them are any good. Anyway, in 1995, Seagal has a lawsuit thrown out and releases his movie Under Siege 2, which later gets him in trouble with Jenny McCarthy during the Me Too movement. A year later, Seagal divorces Kelly LeBrock and appears in two films, Executive Decision and The Glimmer Man. Perhaps having a crisis, Seagal travels to Tibet and is announced to be a reincarnation of a Buddhist Turton, an especially knowledgeable and significant worshipper of Buddhism. Tibet reportedly went, "I really don't think so," and denounced the announcement. His movie Fire Down Below comes out in theaters, and a year later his movie The Patriot releases direct-to-video. It seems theaters were just tired of seeing his face. Jenny McCarthy tries to tell her story with Seagal's harassment, but fired it off too early at this point. Should have waited for the Me Too movement, McCarthy. It'll be a thing in like 20 years. You'll love it. 1999, Steven gets an award from PETA, which is about as prestigious as receiving a knock at the door, opening it, and being handed your own doorknob as a trophy. In the year 2000, Julius Nassau and Steven Seagal have a final falling out over a reported sum of $3 million, which Steven may or may not owe the production company. That much was never cleared up out of all of this. However, what is known is that the falling out was such trouble for Seagal that the well-connected Julius R. Nassau asked some very nice identical friends of his to pay Seagal a visit while on set. He didn't really send the Salamanca twins from Breaking Bad, but it was a lot like that scene where the two of them show up in person in order to demonstrate that they have the power to find people they're looking for. Also, his movie The Prince of Central Park comes out, direct-to-video mundo with a remote control and a daggone Miller in your right hand. Yes, sir. 2001. February. Seagal again meets with the members of the offended mob. This time, the identical friends escort him and his accompanying hired bodyguard to a Brooklyn restaurant where they sat down and discussed business with Sonny Saccone, friend of Jules. Saccone attempted to extort money out of Seagal, demanding Seagal either come make the production company 4 more films or pay them $600,000 up front, or they'd kill him. Sonny and friends would visit Seagal occasionally throughout early 2001 until he paid the bail of a mobster captain. He idealized that this jailed mobster would act as a peacemaker between himself and Jules, and 2 years later, the offending mob were brought under multiple charges, including racketeering and extortion. His film Exit Wounds returned Seagal to the big screen in March of 2001, and while Seagal is absent in response to the attacks on 9/11, he does appear to have been abroad in Mongolia meeting his 4th wife for the first time. Also, his 1996 film Executive Decision got a small resurgence in popularity after 9/11 because it was viewed as prescient in light of the attacks. Really, it was just stupid and a lucky coincidence, as the movie still isn't very good. B-movie might be prescient one day when the Apis apocalypse arrives. But that fact doesn't take away from Jerry Seinfeld's weird tendency towards girls and young women in his own time. 2002, in pre-production for another embarrassing Seagal flick, the big henchman he is, Seagal assaults another woman, and she won't be able to tell her story for another 16 years. That movie, Out for a Kill, won't come out for another year. Theaters see their last major Seagal release for the next 8 years, like a cinematic cicada. Half-past dead theater-goers likely weren't so lucky as the title suggests, perishing outright in their seats by the looks of the reviews. At this point, I'll let you know when something bad happens on set, but I'll leave the movies out of the story from this point on. They're not any good, and they never seem to stop, and frankly, I don't think you care about them. We're here for the blemishes on Seagal's career, not the career itself. So, let's talk blunders. Let's talk Crystal Cave. In 2005, Seagal fancies himself a man of the world, a participant of global culture, a family member every disjointed branch of the bloodline can identify with. We, each of us, are a little bit of Steven Seagal's relative if you go far back enough, and so why shouldn't he pilfer the elements which most please him? Why shouldn't he release a gross, trembling, reggae album? Why shouldn't he dismantle the racial divide by impersonating patois for commercial gain? And you know what? This is America we're talking about. Why shouldn't he sell a line of energy drinks, knives, weaponry, and aftershave? It's Steven Seagal we're talking about here.
That's right, Steven Seagal.
In 2006, Seagal tours the States and the Union with his band, Thunderbox, playing and promoting their second album, Mojo Priest. 3 years later, 2009, Seagal marries his fourth wife, Erdinatuya Batsuk, and begins the Lawman saga. See, by accepting the quest from Sheriff Harry in Louisiana back in the 80s, Seagal earned a ceremonial position as a deputy chief in the state of Louisiana. With these credentials, the ongoing identity crisis, and a fourth marriage event, a hidden plotline gets triggered in 2009, entitled Steven Seagal Lawman. In this quest, Seagal unlocks an array of enforcement-themed outfits and gets to free roam Louisiana with a posse of armed officers. However, a year in, the fun was put on pause as another allegation of harassment made producers hesitate. Sorry, I said harassment, but that's so turn of the century. Steven's into other kinds of things nowadays, namely trafficking, according to Caden Wynn of April 2010. That's right, this isn't the harassment case from 2002, we haven't gotten there yet. That'll come out in another 9 years. Steven has so many harassment and assault claims on him, it might be a little hard to keep track of it, but don't worry, I'm here to help you sort it out. Those trafficking charges would be dropped, however, without any explanation. Mrs. Nguyen would make no comment on the affair, though her story was distressing enough when she initially came forth about it. Steven would continue doing the Lawman show until 2014, when it failed to be renewed for a fourth season. During the run of the show, Lyoto Machida, mixed martial artist and competing fighter, would deal a signature blow to opponent Randy Couture in a 2011 UFC match. This remarkable kick knocked Couture out and won Machida the fight, which in part can be credited to Steven Seagal. Seagal trained with Machida, even claiming that the signature kick was his own, passed down to the fighter in practice. People who know these sports better than I do have been openly skeptic on the matter. Also in 2011, Steven Seagal Lawman moves to Maricopa County, Arizona, where Steven gets into one of the stupidest bouts of his career. Seagal and the later infamous Sheriff Joe Arpaio arrive at the residence of Jesus Sanchez Llovera in March of 2011 with heavy artillery. And I'm not joking either. They showed up in a goddamn tank in order to investigate the premises for cockfighting. Yes, cockfighting. The thing you could see two tottering old men do at the corner of Back Alley Avenue and Prison Block Boulevard. They ended up killing over 100 chickens looking for evidence of cockfighting. They shot and killed Llovera's 11th-month-old puppy in the chaos and rammed the front gate with their tank, which led Llovera to seek $100,000 in damages. According to the Yahoo article which broke the story, all of this may have been caught on film since it was being recorded for an episode of Steven Seagal Lawman. I hope the evidence of this exists out there somewhere, but it's never been seen by the public, unfortunately. But God, would I get my hands on it if I could. 2013, a Russian firearms manufacturer by the name of Ursus works with Seagal to create a new long-ranged rifle called Ursus by Steven Seagal. I'm unable to find any images of this rifle, so it's either in production limbo or is vaporware. Either way, it's hard to find it surprising when Seagal later states support for the annexation of Crimea and throws a Moscow-based party at the outbreak of the war in Ukraine. 2016, Seagal achieves Russian and Serbian citizenship, and a year later, a flood of harassment charges. 2017, Portia de Rossi comes out with claims of harassment. This inspires actress Katherine Heigl to state her own story, admitting that Seagal had 16-year-old girlfriends and showcasing an image in which she was being groped by Seagal live on Jimmy Kimmel. Model Fabiola Davis was also inspired to come out with a statement on Steven's misdeeds towards her. In this time, Seagal releases a book about Islamic terrorists sneaking in through the southern border with Mexico. So, I guess he was a little distracted. He also visited the Philippines for location scouting for a movie and met with Filipino President Rodrigo Duterte, posing with his fist out in front of him. I'm not going to show it due to TOS, as it can arguably be called the Filipino version of a Roman salute, but know that it's a significant political salute after Duterte's bloody war on drugs. 2018, Seagal is appointed to Special Envoy position for American-Russian relations. This will evolve further on, but back in 2002, Seagal assaulted a woman, and 16 years later, she was able to tell her story. That woman inspired Regina Simons to come forth and tell her own story of Steven's aggressive advancements back in 1993. However, for Simons, it went a step further. Believing she was going to a rap party after filming one of Seagal's movies, Simon shows up to a house at night empty of all partygoers except for Steven Seagal. In 2020, Seagal is throttled by the SEC for a crypto coin gaffe. Because he's involved in crypto, of course. Of course, Seagal is involved in cryptocurrency. Why not? Essentially, he was another one of these celebrities who promoted a crypto they had a large investment in, and in Seagal's case, he failed to disclose that he was paid $1 million by the coin owners he was promoting. A year later, Seagal visits Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro with a katana. This video feels like writing Mad Libs. Seagal also joins a pro-Kremlin political party based out of Moscow, Spravedlivaya Russia za Pravdu, or A Just Russia for Truth. In 2022, Seagal visits a prison massacre site for a photo op, which was the most recent development in his story when I had last touched on it. But in 2023, 3 days after my first video on Steven Seagal, he was decorated by Vladimir Putin with the Russian Order of Friendship Award. That is what we have as of March of 2023. In April, he could fall down dead and I wouldn't have it in this video, but I'd stick by the statement I'm about to make now. Steven Seagal is a gross, predatory scumbag, and only by telling you things which are publicly known about him do I have to illustrate it. Maybe that sounds redundant at this point, but I had a significant number of people defending his behavior regarding women, and it puzzles me. Nothing about this man is replicable, as he's unique in his stupidity and abuse, but there seems to be little Stevens running around out there. So do your part and be a better person than Steven Seagal. It doesn't sound hard, but some people are still coming up short, so at least you're doing better than they are. The video is over now. Thank you for watching, and thank you for all the support you guys have shown me thus far. Every little thing that you guys do to show your interest in this channel is what keeps me going, and I can't thank you enough. I'm not so good with speaking off the cuff. I script most of my videos, but these end segments I like to kind of do off the top of my head. I am frankly so glad to be done with Steven Seagal. I have said his name so many times trying to record this and then re-record this video. I am so sick of seeing his pudgy, clay-molded face. But in all honesty, I had a lot of fun making this video. I hope you guys enjoy this video as much as I did while making it. And yeah, I plan on making many more videos like this in the future. I just have to figure out who I'm gonna do them on. But yeah, that's it. Thank you very much, and here comes the next video. You all know what's about to happen. Autoplay clicked on. You better click on autoplay right now, because here it comes. Here comes the next video in order of this one. Here it comes. They're waiting for you over there. They're waiting for your arrival. They've got delicious snacks for you for your entrance. Here comes video B.